Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Beantown vs. Big Apple Sports. I'm your host, Nico Levasseur, alongside my co-hosts, Alex Green and Reed Becker. Today, we'll be discussing the New England Patriots, New York Giants, and New York Jets as we head into the NFL offseason. Starting with the Patriots, Alex, how did the Patriots do this past season, and what moves could they potentially make during this offseason?
So the Patriots exceeded most people's expectations of them by making the playoffs. Unfortunately, they were unable to make it past the Buffalo Bills in the wild card round. But the future is definitely bright in Foxborough. Mac Jones played like the best rookie quarterback of the 2021 draft class. Excuse me. He broke a lot of rookie quarterback records, and he proved himself as an offensive rookie of the year candidate. The Patriots have a lot of decisions to make heading into this offseason. Personally, I think they should let some of the veteran guys like Hightower and McCourty go and replace them with younger, faster guys because that was the biggest issue against the Bills. They just weren't fast enough to keep up with them. And the biggest thing in terms of offseason moves the Patriots need to do is get a true number one receiver for Mac Jones. Jacoby Myers is solid, but he is not a true number one receiving option. And two guys that could potentially go after are Calvin Ridley and Allen Robinson. They both want out of their current situations, and they would help the Patriots tremendously, and the Patriots receiving group tremendously. And the other big thing for the Patriots is re-sign J.C. Jackson. Heading into this season, there were questions about whether J.C. Jackson could be a number one cornerback or not, and he proved that he could finish with finishing with number one cornerback type stats. And he will probably want a hefty contract, but if he can play like he played this past season, that contract should be well worth it for Patriots fans.
Yeah, I agree that they definitely need a number one receiver. Um, and then as you said on defense, I mean, every time you watch the Patriots, they couldn't tackle.
Yeah.
That's been the big problem this season. I think we saw that in Buffalo just a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
The other thing though is that in terms of getting a long-term contract, that's not historically in Bill Belichick's um, playbook. So I don't necessarily see that happening, but we will see.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, I felt like the Patriots had a pretty good season. While the result wasn't exactly what I hoped it would be, things are looking up in Foxborough. Moving on, Reed, how did the Giants do this past season, and what are some potential moves they can make this offseason?
Yeah, so the Giants finished last in the NFC East and took a big step backwards after last season looked like it was heading in the right direction. This forced owner John Mara to clean house as Dave Gettleman, the general manager, quote unquote, retired, when he was really pushed out the door, and Joe Judge was fired. New York just recently hired Bills assistant general manager Joe Shane. This is a good hire for the Giants, considering that he played a big role in rebuilding the Buffalo Bills to where they are now. They are still interviewing for head coaching positions. As of right now, the leading candidate is and slash was Bills offensive coordinator Brian Dable. One of the other big stories that came out of this from the introduction press conference with Shane is that both Mara and Shane were supporting quarterback Daniel Jones and appear not to be interested in moving on from him at this moment. Although you would think that the head coach would also have a say as well. But if I had to guess, I think they're going to stay with Jones. And lastly, the Giants are $5 million over the salary cap, so there will be lots of movable parts on this roster in the offseason. And you wonder if Saquon Barkley will be staying or leaving.
I mean, yeah, you talk about Saquon Barkley. He's kind of wasting his career. Kind of seems like in New York, they haven't really been able to build a team around him. Daniel Jones, I really don't think they should give him another shot. He's had 3, 4 seasons now to prove himself, and he hasn't really been able to do that. Granted, he hasn't had the best offensive line, but I mean, just the management has not built a good team around him.
I agree. First of all, you can never build your whole team around one running back. Just look at Tennessee.
Yeah.
Secondly, I agree that they shouldn't be giving Jones another chance, but at the same time, you're over the cap limit. So you can't, there's really no other option right now. You definitely don't pick up the option, but you give him the other shot. Most likely, you're not going to be able to bring anyone significant in, so he's going to be terrible again this season. And then I think after the 2022 season, they're going to be forced to move on from him.
Seems to me that the Giants have a lot of question marks heading into this offseason, so it'll be interesting which moves they'll make. Moving on to the other New York team, Reed, how did the Jets do this past season, and what moves might they make this offseason?
Yeah,
What do you
so
think?
not much better, but the Jets finished in last place in the AFC East. Surprise, surprise. But however, looking at it from the toilet bowl perspective in New York sports, they are in a better position than the Giants, which is setting a really low bar. The biggest need for the Jets is their defense. Gang Green desperately needs to address their secondary, specifically with cornerbacks and safeties. The Jets also need to give quarterback Zach Wilson a true number one receiver because while Elijah Moore, Denzel Mims, and Corey Davis have shown some flashes, it's too risky to go with a young quarterback and give them some unproven, consistent receivers as a number one threat.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of teams need a true number one receiver. A number one receiver is really a key asset in football. But I mean, talking about Zach Wilson earlier, when we did our early NFL show, we talked about how Zach Wilson got off to a horrible start, and he kind of picked things up second half of the season. Obviously, knowing he was a rookie, there'd be some learning curve there, and just getting adjusted to the NFL and the competitiveness of that league. But I think Zach Wilson is definitely a bright future for the Jets, and they are definitely in a better spot than the Giants, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, the only thing Zach Wilson can do the hard stuff on the run. It's just the short screen passes, simple stuff that he had trouble with, but that should be able to be cleaned up quickly.
Sounds to me like the Jets also have some tough decisions to make heading towards this offseason, but I hope they get Zach Wilson some help. That's all the time we have for today. Join us next time when we discuss the Celtics, Nets, and Knicks as the NBA heads towards the All-Star break. Thank you and goodbye.